lesson 4 of the Year 7 working from home history course. Hopefully you've already done the previous 3 lessons and the quiz which has been sent out to you to complete the check you understand those first 3 lessons. So if you haven't, go check your tasks. I would have sent it to you at some point. There'll be 1 on the Battle of Hastings, 1 on how did William gain control, and 1 on William's character. So hopefully you have already completed those. Today, guys, your title is going to be The Harrying of the North. And you might not know what that means, but we are going to go into it. And this is a picture of what the Harrying of the North involves. So just to start with, just make a note in your book of what you think the Harrying of the North was. Obviously, the North of England, harrying is persistently carrying out attacks on an area, or in this case, on the North. So can you just write down for me 1 sentence of what you think happened in the Harrying of the North? So write your title, write a sentence, and we'll get cracking. So today we're going to describe the events of what happened, to analyse and judge whether it was successful in what's called subjugating English. Now, subjugates are impressive vocab. If you can use that in conversation or in your work today, then excellent. We're boosting our knowledge. I haven't got your word of the day at the minute because we're not in school, so I thought I'd bring the word of the day into your homes via these lessons. Subjugate is to bring under domination or control, especially by conquest. So if you invaded a country and you took it over and everyone was sort of working for you and obeying you, you would have subjugated them. I don't know how you're going to use that in conversation at home, but try and squeeze it in somewhere. We're going to develop our exam skills, and particularly our interpretation skills. So looking at how different interpretations. Remember, an interpretation is you've got the same painting, but one person on the same statue, one person can view it from one side, one person can view it from the other, and they've got different interpretations on the same object. And it's the same with history. It's the same event, but people can interpret it differently. So hopefully you realise the Harrying of the North was William persistently attacking the North. He was hanging people, setting things on fire, moving people, taking treasure, and we need to understand why he did that. So hopefully you've written your title and you've written your little starting sentence. So, victory at the Battle of Hastings did not guarantee William control of England, as we know through our second lesson, how did William gain control. The rebellious North had to be brought in line, which it was ruthlessly in the winter of 1069. So you may want to make a note that the Harrying of the North occurred in the winter of 1069. So the North wouldn't really accept William as their new leader. The North were a very independent area. Northumbria, we're talking about, of those earldoms. Remember the key earldoms? Have a think now if you can remember. Northumbria, Wessex, East Anglia, Wessex are... I said Wessex twice there. Northumbria, Mercia, Wessex and East Anglia are your big 4. There are some other ones like Sussex and Essex, but they sort of fall under Wessex. And the Earl of Northumbria and the Northumbrians didn't really like having a Norman come over and tell all these Anglo-Saxons how to run the country. So they kept rebelling. What would you do to bring the North in line? I want you to write down what you would do now. Think about now. So William obviously set everything on fire. What would you do? If it was me, I would probably try and understand their concerns and work with them. That's what I would do with a modern understanding. Now, William lived 1,000 years ago and is slightly different, so we're going to look at what he did. You need to make a couple of notes to start with. So what happened after the Battle of Hastings in the North? So on the 14th of October, 1066, the Battle of Hastings occurred, and obviously, as we know, William defeated Harold Godwinson and became the king. He didn't automatically become the king. The Witens still had to choose who they thought was going to replace Harold Godwinson. And if you remember from our claimants lesson, ages ago now, there's a kid called Edgar Ethelyn. They chose Edgar Ethelyn. He comes back in a bit of a plot twist. He's now king, sort of. William doesn't have that. He marches up to London from the south coast. He burns towns and kills people, and he sort of goes to London. And the Witten eventually give up and say, right, okay, you are now king. So William's king after a bit of time, not automatically. However, if you remember these two guys, these two geezers, Edwin and Morcar. Edwin is Earl of Mercia, which is like the Midlands. Morcar, Earl of Northumbria. And they aren't happy because they're Anglo-Saxon and the Normans just defeated their Anglo-Saxon king and has taken over England. So they keep rebelling in the north. Remember, these two guys were defeated by Harold Hardrada at the Battle of Fulford before Harold Godwinson killed Harold Hardrada at the Battle of Stamford Bridge. That might be too much information for you, but hopefully you can sort of remember these two guys. We've met them before. So what William does is he replaces Morcar as the Earl of Northumbria, and he takes Edwin and Morcar as hostage so they come and live with him, and he says, look, if things kick off again, I'm going to kill you because you keep rebelling. They escape, and there's an uprising in Northumbria, and this new Norman Earl is killed, and Morcar is part of it. So Morcar escapes being a hostage, goes back up north, and he leads a big rebellion of the Northumbrians against this new Norman Earl of Northumbria, and they kill this new Norman Earl, and obviously William's not happy. He's given him a chance, he's not killed him the first time, he's put one of his own men up there to calm things down, and they're not listening. So, William retaliates, and that's another word, so you got subjugate and retaliate, and it means sort of gets his own back, or punishes them for doing it. So just please, guys, make a note of these key things. When the Battle of Hastings Woods, Edwin and Morcar rebel, and Morcar's replaced, there's an uprising, a new Earl is killed, and William retaliates. Make a note of that, just in like a timeline sequence in your book for me, please. Okay, so let's just fill in. I wanted to do a fill in the gaps exercise. So writing out the white, and then you're going to put the yellow words in the gaps, please. So can you do that now? We'll go through it in a second. Okay, so answers after beating Harold at Hastings, William faced some immediate problems. This is just served as a recap to lesson 2 of these online things, guys. How did William gain control? The castle at Dover, cross out problems, Dover, was still full of Saxon troops. William needed to capture Dover to ensure that the route home to Normandy was clear in case he needed any more soldiers. So Dover sits in the south coast of England, so if that's still occupied by Saxons, William can't get back to Normandy really easily. The city of London was also full of English troops, so William had to move quickly. London, in order to stop a new English army building up. So there are just some of his problems, recapping that second lesson. So we can understand that William didn't have it easy. He had a lot of challenges after his victory in the Battle of Hastings, and one of which was sorting out Northumbria. So let's read this together. The Highland of the North. William had defeated the English army, but not all the English nobles had fought at Hastings. They may still try to oppose him. William was not sure what the English would do, so he did not march to London. First, he captured the castle at Dover, which, you know, it's full of Saxons, so they had to get that route back to Normandy. Then he captured the cities of Canterbury and Winchester, there right on the south coast, sort of south of London. In December, William marched to London. He showed how powerful he was by burning down property and killing the English. You can see a theme now. William, when things don't go his way or he's got to show his power, he kills people and he burns places and he destroys places. Soon the English nobles told him they would accept him as king. He was crowned at Westminster Abbey on Christmas Day 1066. William told the English nobles that if they swore, that should be an oath of loyalty to him, they could keep their lands. However, William also gave a lot of land to men who had fought for the Normans at Hastings. The English did not always like their Norman lords and fought them, especially when taxes were put up. So in 1067 there was rebellions in Kent and Exeter. So whilst he did say to the Saxons, look, if you swear to be loyal to me, you can keep your land. But he also had to reward all those men who came over and fought with him at Hastings from Normandy. So he gave those a lot of Anglo-Saxon land in areas Saxons had been killed or Saxons weren't being loyal to him. However, the Saxon population did not like having a Norman earl, especially Northumbria. But the most important rebellion took place in the north in 1068 to 69. The north was the most independent part of England, so William tried to put his men in charge of it with the help from the Danes, so the people from Denmark. English rebels burnt William's castle in York to the ground and killed many Normans. So this is their response to when William replaced Morcar with a Norman earl and Morcar then came back up to Northumbria. The Northumbrian Saxons did not like this. They didn't like being ruled by a Frenchman or a Norman, so they rebelled. William decided to teach the English the lesson. All through the winter of 1069 to 70, he led his army across the north, burning houses and killing people. He destroyed whole villages and farms, and he killed all the livestock. When he had finished, it was a blackened waste. This was known as the Harrying of the North. It caused terrible famine, and many people died of starvation. So this is the events, that's what happened, and this is the cause. So what I want you to do, guys, just in your books for me, is write down the cause of it, it's your information in this paragraph here, and I want you to write the events. So put events, dash, cause, dash, and then you're just going to write a sentence or two to explain what the cause were, what the events, using that paragraph there. So do that now, pause the video, have a go. So that's what happened. Let's have a look at this source together. And listen now how the Anglo-Saxons suffered from the harrying. There was such hunger that men ate human flesh, and the flesh of horses and dogs and cats. Others sold themselves into slavery so that they could live out their miserable lives. It was horrible to look into the ruined farmyards and houses and see the rotting human corpses, for there were none to bury them, for all were gone, either in flight so they ran away, or cut down by the sword and famine, so killed. None lived there, and travellers passed in great fear of wild beasts and savage robbers. There was no village inhabited between York and Durham. Now that's a big part of England, that's a big chunk. There's no one there. They've either ran away or they're dead. And you didn't stay there, you didn't live there, you moved if you had been lucky enough to survive. So in response to the Northumbria sort of killing the Normans in the north and rebelling, William goes in, he burns fields, he burns houses, he hangs people, he makes sure there's no food for anyone. So if you aren't killed directly by the sword or by the fire, you die from starvation. And people had to eat dogs, cats, animals, and eventually eat the corpses of the people who lived around them who had died. So this really shows what happened. So all I want you to put, guys, is I want you to make 2 or 3 bullet points on the impact. So talk about the key points of here. So eating human flesh, no one lived there, no villages between York and Durham. Pause it and do that now. Now we need to look at the consequences. Quite a short lesson today, guys. We've got a couple more slides to do, which you'll be pleased to know. So in 1069, William marched on York and crushed the rebellion. The Normans devastated nothing, and they sacked every village and farmstead as they went. Then William divided his troops into small bands who destroyed any crops and livestock they could find. So here's some consequences for you. This little bit at the bottom. There is a little bit in here you can use as well. You need to know this is a question at the end. A huge area across northern and central England were laid waste by the scorched earth on the northern rebels. Plotting the settlements destroyed by the Normans show the scar that was carved across the country by William's army. 16 years later, these areas were still desolate wasteland. So I just want you to put 2 consequences, please. Talk about there being 16 years later, there was still desolate wasteland. You talk about people having to eat animals, anything like that. If we pause that, go do that for me, please, guys. Alright, last thing we need to do before we finish. Now we need to look at interpretation. So this is Orderic Vitalis. Now Orderic Vitalis is interesting because he's both Anglo, his mum was English, and Norman, his dad was French. And Orderic Vitalis was born in 1075. So sort of 9 years after William had come over and conquered England, and about 6 years after the harrying of the North. So he wasn't there, but he was both English and Norman, so he wasn't really biased one way or the other. He was a monk, because most people who did write in these times were religious people like monks. So let's give this interpretation a read, bearing in mind that this guy is both English and Norman, so he's sort of mixed and doesn't have a bias either way, hopefully. The king stopped at nothing, the king being William, to hunt his enemies. He cut down many people and destroyed homes and land. Nowhere else had he shown such cruelty. This made a real change. To his shame, William made no effort to control his fury, punishing the innocent with the guilty. He ordered that crops and herds, tools and food be burned to ash. More than 100,000 people, which is a lot in those days, perished of starvation. I have often praised William in this book, but I can say nothing good about this brutal slaughter. God will punish him. So 2 questions for you. What can we learn from this source? And number 2, what can we learn from this source? And number 2, can we trust this source? If you don't know the answer to that, rewind, because I mentioned about a minute ago why we might be able to trust this guy more than other sources. So give those 2 questions a go, and then we can finish off. So, 4 questions to finish, guys. When did it take place? Why did it happen? What were the consequences? And how have historians interpreted it? Pause the video, have a go for me. Obviously, if you just have the same answers what I'm about to write down in a minute, I'm going to know you're copied. I'm not stupid. So try and write your own, then mark it after. So pause, have a go on pause, and we'll go through the answers. Alright, when did the Harrying of the North take place? So it's the winter of 1069 into 1070. Why did it happen? Northumbria were rebelling. All the consequences, 100,000 dead. No village, no settlements between York and Durham. How have historians interpreted it? Brutal slaughter. God will punish William. Basically, there's no one really defending it. There's no defence of this. Everyone says it's far too cruel, far too violent, and far too harsh. But that sort of sums up William as a king. Very effective, very successful, but was he a king which was loved? Was he a king which was fair? Probably not, but maybe that's why he was so successful. So that concludes today's lesson, guys. Thank you very much. 16 minutes, probably the shortest one we've done so far. Thank you very much for taking part. Hopefully it's been useful to you. I hope you're all keeping well at home. All being well, we'll be back in school soon enough and going back to normal lessons. And you can all annoy me with your staff questions again. Until then, look after yourselves, carry on doing all your work, and I'll see you for the next lesson. Cheerio.